was going earlier with the insurance stuff. You've got to start thinking of your insurance, your health insurance, as managed care. They are there to manage chronic disease, maximize profits.
Right.
Turn left onto Gibbons-and-Hofstrasse. Signs for Centrum.
What do I mean by that? Think of it like car insurance. Your car insurance is there when you wreck the car. Your car insurance is not there to rotate the tires, change the oil, and maintain the car. Dana White had an amazing quote: "I will never go to a fucking primary care again in this country." And he articulated it without even knowing he's articulating it. And he's not even a healthcare guy. And Dana saw it. And so...
Well, it's based on his own personal recovery. The way his body... When Gary Brecka started working with him, he was, really overweight, pre-diabetic, really fucked up. And now...
Continue for 2 kilometers.
Fantastic. What's crazy to me is, like, the red light bed, what it's done to his face.
It's crazy.
Like, his face looks 10 years younger. It's nuts.
Well, a lot of people don't understand, like, that. And again, Huberman did a phenomenal job. I can't remember the exact podcast, but he dove deep into so when these primary cares or your doctor out there says red light therapy's bullshit, they don't know what they're talking about. It's been around since 1905. A guy won a Nobel Prize for using it to treat a disease state. I can't remember all of it. I'll butcher it, so I won't even try. But the gist of it is, there was just a study done in orthopedics that red light therapy helped reduce osteoarthritis better than steroid injections and the other treatment options that they're using in the marketplace in orthopedics today. And it's not foo-foo pseudoscience. Huberman breaks it down and explains it through using red lights. There's long wave and short wave, right? And the long wave pierces through the epidermis into all of the tissue in your body, all the way to the cellular level, all the way to your cells, spurring cellular turnover and increasing ATP, which is cellular energy. And so it gives your body the energy needed to heal itself. It reduces inflammation. It helps with neuropathic pain. It helps with skin tone, skin complexion. It helps with eyesight. But again, these are all things that typically aren't talked about in traditional medicine.
Well, like I said, I know it works. I know it works because I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is the ability to maintain, because everyone's worried about getting old and getting decrepit. But if you're not seeing any decline as you age in your ability to maintain your physique, your endurance, your energy levels, we haven't done this before. Like, this hasn't been something on a large scale that human beings have participated in while they were going through this process of degeneration, the natural degeneration that most people experience.
Well, it's such a multitude. You asked me too last time what you asked me about low testosterone and what could have caused it, and I look at that and I go, it's everything, right? Like there's another, when we get back to red light or not red light, green and blue light can increase testosterone levels, right? Not only can, they will. You get it from sunlight. So what you found is if you stand in the sun 30 minutes a day, it drastically improves testosterone levels. Again, Huberman goes into this too on a different podcast.
How much?
He breaks it down. I don't remember the exact specifics, but the gist of it is if you have low testosterone, okay, are you inflamed? What is your diet? Are you working out? Are you lifting weights? Are you getting sleep? Are you getting sunlight? Are you eating good protein sources? These are all just basic questions that we could ask and dive into to help patients optimize their hormone levels. But what happens if like for me, I was up at 4 a.m. to go get into the operating room. I stood in the operating room and would come out and it'd be dark again. I didn't see the light of day for freaking like 13 years, like literally. And so I look back now and I'm like, well, of course. Because what happens is if you don't get sunlight, your body upregulates melatonin. And melatonin reduces testicular function and drives down testosterone. And they believe it's because we evolved, like essentially when we were cave dwellers, we would, in the winters, in the cold time of the year, our rhythms would change with the environment and we would go and be more indoors. That wasn't the best time to breed or procreate. And so in the spring, in the summer, when there's more sunlight, you're in the sun more, and your melatonin level deregulates, your testosterone level upregulates, and all of a sudden you're fertile. And same thing with women. Women are impacted by this as well. Women have testosterone too, so if they're not getting enough sunlight, it can kill their sex drive. It can mess up their hormone levels.
Well, women have more testosterone than they have estrogen.
I know, a lot of people don't realize
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it is wild.
It's the primary sex hormone for
yeah.
both sexes.
Yeah, it's nuts. So he gets Huberman gets into all that. Academia, there's tons of studies on this. So and all, I think the main reason it's not adopted more often is they're just in the insurance model, right? They use the tool that's in their tool belt, and if that's not a tool in my tool belt, then I'm not going to talk about it, and I don't have time to do it. And that's where I see large language models and an evolving market allowing patients to get that education on their own. They don't have to wait to talk to a doctor, right? I will have a team of academics right there at your fingertips, proactively analyzing everything about you. And I would tell you, I talked about predictive, proactive, personalized, all that. Another one would be private. You do not want this data in the hands of insurance companies. Listen to what Gary Brecka was telling you. He worked for the big insurance companies. He worked to assess your all-cause mortality risk and the risk profile to the insurance company, right? And so if let's just say in a miracle world, all of a sudden, Blue Cross Blue Shield rolls out a large language model to streamline your experience, and they want to tie into your wearables. The last person you want digging through your underwear drawer is the insurance company, because they're going to use it to limit your care, to limit what they cover, and to kick you off a plan, right? They're going to know when the chronic disease is coming, and they're going to charge you when they know they can monetize you. And then as soon as you reach a state where they can't, and that's the dangerous side of these large language models, and that's the dangerous side of the tool. And so a sword in the right hands is, one thing, and a sword in the wrong hands is a whole nother thing.
Jesus. I wonder if they are trying to do that. I wonder if these insurance companies are trying to.
They're for sure going to roll that out. Yeah, if they're not already. And that's the problem. Like when you have an insurance-based model, and that's where I would tell you, maintain the car outside of the system, right?
And the insurance-based large language models are going to ensure that you stay on these treatments because that's where they're profitable.
Correct. So there's the insurance company, and then we broke this down last time. Then there's the pharmacy benefit manager. Pharmacy benefit managers are a middleman between the insurance companies and big pharma. Okay, and they were put in place to negotiate the price of pharmaceutical drugs for the average American, because so many drugs were coming into the marketplace. The government couldn't get to and decipher what drugs make sense, what drugs don't make sense, what should we cover, what should we not cover. So they allowed pharmacy benefit managers to do that. Within a decade, the big insurance companies went out and acquired pharmacy benefit managers. Within a decade from that date, the pharmacy benefit managers began to negotiate rebates to themselves, not discounts to the patient.
In 300 meters, slide right onto Spitalatorgraben.
Okay, so yeah, that's where I'm trying to go with this. When I talked about 244 million in fraud in the state of Ohio, how? Where's the fraud? And the answer is the margins are made in the mystery. The more confusing the insurance companies can make it, and the more convoluted they can make it, the more profits they can make. They have only a handful of levers they can pull to make money. So let's go over that. They can raise your copay. They can raise your deductible. They can raise your out-of-pocket expense. That's one lever. They can drive down the price of a drug that they buy at a wholesale price point. They can mark up the coverage of your care for your employer. Okay, and then they tier price. All the pharmacy benefit manager gives a tier pricing. That tier pricing is not based on what drug is best for you. It is based on what drug is best for their financials. And so they prioritize drugs in a tier pricing.
In 200 meters, slide right onto Spitalatorgraben.
A misnomer to the American people that a tier 1 drug is the best drug, and
slide right onto Spitalatorgraben, then turn right onto Further Tor.
4 drug is not as good. right? But the truth is a tier 4 drug is not as profitable because there's a lesser rebate. And so let's go back to the insulin example. The average price of this insulin is $381 is what the Senate Finance Committee found. $381 on, I can't remember if it's Sanofi, I think, was their price. Out of that, the pharmaceutical company got less than $40. So that remaining $200-something stayed at the pharmacy benefit manager. Okay, pharmacy benefit managers are making billions upon billions of dollars a year. They decide what gets covered, what goes on your insurance plan, what your copay is, what your deductible is, and they can move any lever at any time. So, examples, let's go back.
Head northeast on Ludwigster towards Spitalatormauer. In
P1s, right? The weight loss diabetes medication.
Turn left onto Schleyengasse, then turn right onto Schlorfegergasse.
Those are showing up on insurance plans as tier 4 with a really high price tag. When you look at that and you go, man, wouldn't insurance companies want to get rid of that because it's costing them a lot? No.
Turn right onto Schlorfegergasse, then turn right to stay on Schlorfegergasse.
They're showing that the price of a GLP-1 is $1,300. They never paid $1,300.
Turn right to stay on Schlorfegergasse.
They paid a fraction of that. But then they go to the patient and they say, hey, this is a tier 4 drug. You have a 50% copay on this drug. $500.
In 500 meters, continue straight onto Adlerstrasse.
Okay, so they made their money there. They made their money off the rebate from Big Pharma. Then
So
they
the
come
patient pays more than they actually are paying for the drug.
Correct. That is what happens on most drugs. And
that's
that is
just
why
the
I built a
copay.
compounding pharmacy.
Yeah.
And but even if they don't, let's say it's a drug that you think is covered. Okay. Maybe the pharmacy benefit manager got it wrong. A drug entered the market. They didn't know it was going to be a blockbuster. They miscalculated how this was going to play out. They have lever after lever they can pull. Okay, high margin drugs, they've gone out and bought pharmacies. So they own mail order pharmacies. And so what they'll do, like when I owned a pharmacy, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they literally said they owed me over $1 million for 1 month of shipping out drugs. I'd already shipped all the drugs to their patient. I'd already done everything. They come in and say, yeah, we're not going to pay you. We don't think you collected the copays or deductibles. Okay, we did. Here's all the records I can show you.
Continue straight onto Adlerstrasse.
Soon, can you get an auditor out? We want to cooperate. Like, we're a small company. We need this money. It's 3 months before we can get to you. Okay, and then they begin to make it so hard for you to survive in their insurance model. And then you'll be sitting there and a couple months later, knock on the door. Hey, man, heard it's tough out there for these small pharmacies. You know, we're looking to acquire pharmacies just like...
In 200 meters, you will arrive at your destination.
Right? They've gobbled up the lifeblood of America. They've put all these...
Sharp right onto Kaiserstrasse, then turn left onto Karlsbrücke. In 150 meters, make a U-turn.
pharmacies out.
Head east on Adlerstrasse towards Kannengaschen.
They now own most of these big juggernaut pharmacies. So even if CVS says we only made $10 off that prescription, what did the pharmacy benefit manager make? Okay, or what is the pharmacy, your mail order pharmacy, making? Lever after lever after lever. Then the last part of it is my buddy who has MS. His MS treatment, I think, is $14,000 a month. We just met. I have 260 something employees across both organizations. We met with the insurance company. They're raising our rates because they claim they paid $14,000 a month for his drug, right? He had a huge out-of-pocket burden.
Sharp right onto Kaiserstrasse, then turn left onto Karlsbrücke.
Drug, but was happy because he thought, well, hey man, it was going to be 14 and I only had to pay X.
Turn left onto Karlsbrücke, Trodelmarkt.
They never paid the 14 because they negotiated a rebate on the back end, and then they turn around and they mark up my insurance plan for all my employees every year, year after year. It is a profit-driven system, not a patient outcome-driven system. And so that's all I'm trying to hammer home with patients. When you say, why don't you take insurance? Because insurance is the crux of the problem. You cannot operate in that ecosystem and provide quality care. You can't. Your clinicians talk. A lot of clinicians don't know. Like, a lot of clinicians don't even know about pharmacy benefit managers. The only reason I know is because I've been in every...
Turn right onto Karl Grillenberger Strasse, then turn left onto Mohrengasse.
Aspect of this business, and then I would get into it and I go, oh God, that's why that was happening. Okay, now I get it. Now I get the magic trick. I understand what you're doing here, how you're moving and shifting profits and monetizing disease states. So think about this. If I can monetize your diabetes, why would I cure or
Head north on Hintere Ledergasse, Melgasse, then slide right onto Hintere Ledergasse.
Your diabetes, right? And I know if I'm a bigwig at United or Cigna, that you're going to switch jobs in 3 years, and by the time that diabetes leads to metabolic disease and a cascade effect that puts you in a hospital that costs me more money, you're somebody else's problem. Or if I can stall it long enough, you're the federal government's problem. And so every aspect of healthcare is focused on that.
Slide right onto Hintere Ledergasse.
On that time frame. Another terrible example of surgery, and this is honest to God. I talked to my buddy who's a president at an orthopedic company. He told me he was sitting down with a surgery center about joints. And there's a new joint that they have, and it's more expensive, but the efficacy data of the long-term benefits on it astronomically outperform the other joint that this hospital system was using. He sat down with the CEO of the hospital, and he said, here's the data, 5 years out, here's what we're seeing, da-da-da-da-da. The CEO said, I don't give a shit what happens 5 years out. I swear to God, this is a call I had yesterday. He said he looked me in the eye, Brigham, and he said, if you told me that this joint will last at least 90 days and it's cheaper, that's all I care about.
Oh my
because
God.
all of their data and records and accountability are only on the first 90 days. Once you're out of that 90 day and you've done your little review and all that, you're off again and you're no longer a monetizable patient. And so too, when we talk about primary cares and what's happened, the same thing with pharmacies where they've been gobbled up by insurance companies, if they're in the insurance model, is the same thing that happened with primary care.
In 500 meters, turn left onto Weintraubengasse.
The day of a primary care being independent and a free thinker is over. They're employed by hospital systems. Major conglomerates have gone out and bought up the primary care practice. Why? Because now they have the patient population. If I can get you at the primary care level, then I can control the referral of where that primary care sends you as we profiteer off your disease state. Okay, so you go to a primary care. Let's just walk through the same example I gave earlier. A methylfolate test. They never run that test, right? There's genetics. The methylfolate test tells me my genetics, but there's epigenetics. The choices I make every day impact which genes turn on and which genes turn off. If nobody ever has a conversation with me in my 30s about my hormone levels, about getting into the sun, about eating right, and you push me towards chronic disease because you wrote me a prescription to treat a symptom, and now I go through this system and I get cancer, that primary care is going to refer me to an oncologist, and that oncologist is part of that same system, right? And most people don't know this. 65% of an oncologist's income comes from chemotherapy, from the markup they're making off your chemotherapy. 65%, and I attached that link
Turn left onto Weintraubengasse.
too, where it talks about this. So all I'm getting at is, Russell Brand said this, and he was spot on. Another guy who's not a clinician but understood what's going on here. If we make things about profits and quarterly earnings and big business and not patient outcomes, don't be shocked when we get phenomenal quarterly earnings and piss poor patient outcomes.
In 300 meters.
have it.
So they have a financial incentive.
Yeah. So this is an article where they were trying to, the insurance companies were trying to incentivize them to use a generic in this instance, because this is one of those issues where there's no rebate and no way for the insurance company to monetize it.
Turn right onto Nuremberg.
Breaks down how much money these guys, 65% of an oncologist's income comes from that.
Wow. This is incredible.
And so I say all this again because I don't think that a clinician's to blame. I don't think that they're
Continue for 4 kilometers.
operating in the system that they're given. They're playing with the playing field that's been set before them and the rules of the game that have been set before them. But when patients say, why would I go to Peter Attia? Why would I go to Gary Brecka? Why would I go to Ways to Well? Why would I go to a cash pay clinic? You will not get these treatment modalities, and you will not have these conversations, and you will not do that deep dive. So in a dream world, what I'm envisioning as we build this multidisciplinary institute here in Austin, and we open these facilities across the country, is a lot of the care will be virtual and will be managed from the comfort of your own home, driven by large language models that are tying into your wearables and all those things we talked about earlier. But we first have to establish a baseline. What do I mean by that? If budget was no constraint and you could afford $1,200, I would say you come in, you do a DEXA, you do a VO2 max. Those two data sets alone allow us to calculate your all-cause mortality risk. I know how much visceral fat you have. I know how much subcutaneous fat you have. I know how much lean muscle mass you have on your left quad versus your right quad. I know your bone mineral density. Then we add in a VO2 max test. If you can be in the top 25% of VO2 max, you reduce all-cause mortality by 400%. Okay, so now you combine that with a DEXA. Now you combine that with a gut biome. Now you combine that with a gene test where we know what genes you have, what are your genetics. Now we can help guide you on how to prevent epigenetics, how to prevent and use epigenetics to prevent disease states from chronically manifesting. And we can truly get proactive and predictive. We can truly prevent chronic disease. When you said living to be 106 or 112, whatever you said, Peter Attia talks about this too. The difference between somebody dying at the average human life expectancy and making it to be a centenarian, the only difference is the onset of chronic disease. So today, can we stop or slow the progression of chronic disease? And by brilliant minds like David Sinclair, like Ian White, my stem cell buddy, who's our chief science officer, can we buy them time to see if they can unlock the code? Because when Ian breaks it down, and I definitely want to get into stem cells, I don't know how far in we are.
We're good.
Okay. Because when Ian breaks down, when you start talking, this isn't me talking, like I'm trying to learn like a sponge from people who are way smarter than me. Like I'm a simpleton just trying to make it and figure it out. But when Ian breaks down that we share a common, his theory is this: in the world of biology, we share a common ancestor with species that live 400 years. The Greenland shark lives 400 to 600 years with no cancer. We have a jellyfish that lives eternally in the ocean. It lives over 5,000 years. It can regenerate. We have salamanders that can regenerate limbs. We have Galapagos tortoise that lives over 200 years. We share a common ancestor with those species. And what that means is within our genetic makeup, within our code, we have the code to access those traits. How do we find those black boxes and activate them, right? And so for me, when I talk about, optimists are usually successful, pessimists are usually right, like I'm optimistic. The future's bright. The opportunity's there. We can do this. There's so much opportunity, but the first step is to get proactive, to take yourself out of the system, to do the data, because we can't improve what we don't measure. So if you were to come in and establish that baseline that I was talking about earlier, we now have a full comprehensive analysis of where you started the day you started treatment. The only test I hadn't got to yet is an EEG. So for me, we do, Shane Dorian introduced me to Wave Neuroscience. super cool company. They're using artificial intelligence. Again, it's a tool, right? Can be used for good or bad. The example of where AI can be used for great things is they use artificial intelligence to analyze an EEG and to put it into a report that a layman, Neanderthal like me can understand. So they scanned my brain. I was able to look at this report and tell how my neurons are firing, where my neurons are misfiring, how my neurons are losing bandwidth from the posterior of my brain to the prefrontal cortex of my brain. Okay, why is that important? That woman we talked about earlier that may have anxiety or depression, that's another tool to assess that. We know that it has over an 80% success rate, way more efficacious than any SSRI, which have been debunked and proven to be bullshit too. Way more than any of these antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, and it's a permanent fix. We scan your brain waves, and then from there, we can use a technology called MERT, which is a magnet, and the AI will give you a precision approach to rewiring your brain. So it uses a magnet to pull those firing neurons down the correct path. And so let me quantify it and give you an example of how it works. For me, my brain, so the human brain has variances. Some brains are moving as slow as 6.5 hertz, top tier is 13 hertz. And that's how fast you can analyze data. And so if there was a red dot and I flashed it up on a screen and I flash it once, everyone will see that as long as they're above 6.5 hertz. If I flash it twice really fast, anyone below 9.5 hertz, they won't be able to make that signal connect to the prefrontal cortex to assess that it flashed twice. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the posterior of my brain moves at 12.5 hertz. That's a really fast brain relative to the average population. But by the time it makes it to the front of my brain, I'm moving at 9.5 hertz. Why? It's years of sleepless nights, stress, anxiety, epigenetics, diet, nutrition, head trauma, these athletes with concussions. So they're using it mainly to treat athletes with depression from concussions and brain injuries. And we can't fix the anatomical issues of the brain, but we can help those neurons fire appropriately and maximize the delivery.
In 400 meters, turn right onto Marienbergstrasse.
Bandwidth of the signal. And so through brain mapping, we're able to create a precision plan where that magnet is literally tuned to the frequency of my brain and is able to drive that 12.5 hertz all the way from the posterior
Turn right onto Marienbergstrasse.
to the prefrontal cortex.
Have you done this?
Yeah.
What did it do for you?
I haven't gone through the training yet. Yeah, we just got the equipment at Waste.
Continue on Marienbergstrasse for 2 kilometers.
Last week.
Are you going to do it for yourself?
Oh yeah. Because I'm at 12.5, and at the prefrontal I'm at 9.5. Okay, that's almost a 20% improvement in brain cognitive function. And so when I love the idea of human optimization, like I love helping people, but like refining people who are already studs, that's fun. I immediately think, what about, they're using it a lot with high-level operators. They've already signed all these government Department of Defense contracts, and they're using it for Navy SEALs, for snipers, for people who have to make split-second decisions under high-pressure environments. You want that neuron firing all the way
I would
through.
imagine it'd be good for comedy.
Oh, dang. I immediately thought of Tony Hinchcliffe, because sarcasm is a sign of a really powerful prefrontal cortex. So I was interested in like somebody who's like an improv roaster type.
Oh, he's the best at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to find out how his brain's.
We're going to have it at the clinic. It's actually going to arrive tomorrow.
I want to do it.
It's sick.
I want to
It's
find out
sick
what's going
stuff.
on in my brain.
It's amazing. So for me, the other thing I found out is I don't want to call it an anomaly. I have a rare type of brain. Less than 15% of brains have a prefrontal cortex that can fire at the same speed as the posterior, is what they were telling me. So I could maximize, I'm not maximizing my brain's potential. And then I go to, okay, when we talk about the 4 horsemen, diabetes, atherosclerosis, cancer, and then the last one's neuropathic decline, Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration. When we begin to use these tools and allow AI